Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Change Mentors. I'm Ann Jagger, and I'm here today with Patricia Leonard and Craig A. Stevens, and we are going to talk about performance measurements today. Patricia, will you lead this session off, please?
Sure. Thank you so much, Anne. What I'd like to do is just give us a platform to jump off of today, and then Craig and Anne and I will fill in some of the details as we move along. So I was reading an article recently, getting ready for this podcast, and I came across a couple of points that I thought really would help create the foundation for us for today. This author was talking about the key reason for performance management is to improve overall performance in meaningful ways. The performance measurement process that was suggested in this article was just like this. It read like this: performance measurement is the process of collecting, analyzing, and reporting information regarding the performance of, and I think these are the key points right here, of individuals, groups, organizations, systems, and components. So without a measurement, we realize that we don't know how to improve, and we don't know anything meaningful about the way the company or the organization or the individual is progressing. So this is a great way, measurement. And there was one little quote that I really liked a lot: without measurement, we don't know if there is improvement, and we don't know what is meaningful. So I think that's one of the places to step off today and start to help us look at some of the pieces of that measurement process and the value of it to organizations and to individuals.
Yeah, and the words continuous improvement are important in all of our lives and all our organizations. And without performance measures, like Patricia was saying, you don't know if you're getting better or you're getting worse. And so that's one of the key reasons you might have performance measures, to see if your continuous improvement efforts are getting you closer to your goals.
Yes.
Would you like me to share my slides, Patricia? Or should
I
I
think
start?
that makes a lot. Oh, yes, that makes a lot of sense now, because performance measures give us a chance, just like you were saying, to improve the behavior of the organization, the way it's seen. I mean, there are several things, and I want to highlight these later, but I'd like to, as you go through your slides,
perfect,
because I think it makes sense then.
Perfect. So should I start with the story I told you guys?
Sure.
All right. So when I was working on my PhD a long time ago, and now we're talking about the 80s, right? The late 80s, I was working on this PhD. So all of the performance measures in the, well, it's hard to believe this, but there's just not a whole lot of performance measures out there. So I worked for the Department of Energy through a large consulting company, and they were grappling with the whole concept of what performance measures are and how should we measure our own performance. They knew they had to do it, but they just didn't understand how to do it because they never had to do it before. So 200 managers got in this big room, and I was told to sit there as a young, I'm in my 20s, right? So I sit there and just not say a word, because they knew I was outspoken and they knew I would say something. And I think in the back of their minds, they were thinking that if I lay out the plan, we're not going to be able to bid on that plan, if that makes sense. So about half of this meeting, it was a full day. Half of this meeting, there's a facilitator that didn't know how to spell performance measures. More, he didn't even know what it was. He couldn't get close to it. He was just trying to get conversation started. And he was a non-technical person, and his whole background was just didn't make it easy for him. And so they're trying to figure out, well, how can we put numbers to performance measures? And people are arguing the whole half a day. People are arguing and frustrated and sitting there with their arms crossed and looking away and everything else. And the whole time I was trying to give them little hints on what to ask and what to say. And so I was told not to say anything, but I was still trying to work with the clients I had and make them look good. And the clients kept saying, well, let's get Craig to talk. He knows what performance measures are. And I knew that if I did that, I'd probably get fired or something. And maybe we wouldn't get that big contract or anything else, something like that. So the whole day I was so frustrated. So by lunchtime, I was thinking, I'm going to quit this job. This is the most frustrating thing I can think of. These guys don't know anything. They need lots of help and I can help them, but I can't do that. So over the lunchtime, anybody that wanted to come around me, I gave them a lesson in what performance measures were and the 7 steps to performance measures. And so the second half of that meeting went great. Everybody was happy. Everybody was talking. Okay, let's go step in. And they weren't saying this because it'd blow my cover, but they're saying, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that, and then we're going to do this. So that's what I want to show you, what I shared with them.
Great.
And so to get there, I have it on slides, and the slides may be a little outdated too, because this was done in the late 80s, when I first put this together. All right, so let's see. I'm sharing my screen now. All right, so first off, performance measures is part of a bigger picture. We have the 7 attributes of excellent management, and I'll walk through that real quick. But leadership drives culture. Culture is what holds up the customer focus. Leadership says customers are important. Culture says it's important to us too. And then people balance their skills and core competencies, and they continue to improve processes and systems. But this is the key to performance measures. You don't know whether you're getting better or you're getting worse unless you measure performance. So that's where it fits. It fits here. You remove any one of these, it's out of balance because it all has to fit together. The culture has to want the performance measures. It has to be around your goals of satisfying, making raving fans out of your customers. It has to be connected to people, has to be connected to their skills, has to be connected to all this other things. You have to measure leadership, culture, customer focus, all that stuff is what you're measuring. So that's it. Like Patricia, like you said, it's a big picture approach. You measure everything. Without it, you're out of balance. It doesn't work. Your mobile is broken. You throw it away. All right. So anyway, with there's 7 attributes of excellent management, there are 7 steps with performance measures. I spent this was one of my PhD projects. So I spent a whole bunch of time because there wasn't a good explanation of what performance measures were at that time. So I spent months trying to come up with what does that mean. So I looked at 60 different articles and books, and it was around 60, maybe over 60. And I came up with these 7 steps. So we're going to go look at one of them at a time. And Patricia and Patricia and Ann, I was going to get Patricia twice. And I want you to go in and tell me what you think of these as we get to them. So the first one, you got to know the rules. It's like the people in that room did not know anything about performance measures. They didn't know the principles. They didn't know the objectives. They didn't know the rules. And so if you don't know the rules, you'll break rules. And there's some real simple rules. I'll give you a couple and then we can expand on them. So know the rules. Measure what is important. Concentrate on the main strategic priorities. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's logical to us. And why is that important? Because performance measure takes time away from what you do. It costs a lot of money. It irritates people. And you don't want to just be passing reports around, right? You don't want to just measure everything. Because if you measure everything, you're getting away from the strategic priorities. And I think we gave this example a couple of podcasts back, but if everything's important, nothing's important. If you take the really things you're most want to see and you add 100 more things to it, they average out and they all become bland. Mm-hmm. So you want to keep the strategic priorities. Patricia, you probably have stories about this because
No, I think this is funny because I was laughing to myself. One of my pet peeves is that a rule should be, and I don't know if this fits here, but that we don't have meetings that go on and on and on and on without a goal, without a goal. And if we know why we're coming to the meeting, the key objective, then we would keep those meetings. Once we got them done, we would know exactly what we have. So I think concentrate on some main strategic priorities, and that's one for me. How about you, Ann?
No, it's funny you say that because I was at that time, like in the 80s, 70s and 80s, I would sit through meetings that would go on for hours and we would get nothing done.
Yeah.
And I'd leave there feeling like I wasted part of my day that I could have been doing something
Yes.
much more productive. So when I got my own company, I set time limits. It's like I sent an agenda out and we hit the agenda, and our meetings were between 15 minutes and half an hour. So you had 3 minutes, 5 minutes. If you needed to expand on that, then you got together with whomever needed to be in your group in order to figure things out. But I was so sick of going to meetings. I had days where I spent 6 hours out of 8 in meetings and did
Right.
virtually nothing.
And I like that measurement tool that you just introduced is an agenda. It helps us measure what we're getting done and that we're doing it within a certain time limit. I like that a lot. Very
Yeah.
simple. We don't think of some of these simple things that help us manage our meetings and and get things done.
And so I said the late 80s, but really it's the early 90s. I just noticed this. That's
Still
this,
happens.
yeah, articles. But so 91
Yeah.
was when this article was written. I was at this conference. I actually presented a paper, and that's what drew me to this article. But all right, so now, so strategic things are important, but there's a catch to that. Well, what if we're measuring quality of something? Are there other strategic things that are important? Well, cost,
Yes.
yeah, safety, a whole bunch of things. It's got to be high quality, but it's got to be good cost. So what we have to do is we have to measure a family of measures. And that will allow for different conflicting objectives, like costs can sometimes conflict with quality. So you got to create an index with your metrics so that you're not just have the highest quality thing in the world is gold plated, which is kind of a bad term in project management. You want to make sure that it actually fits the form, fit and function and cost and everything else that you're trying to do. So a family of measures is important. That's one of the rules.
Yes.
I don't know if this is the place to bring this up, but having a facility where it was a print company, so I considered it manufacturing because we manufactured products. They were custom products, but we manufactured nonetheless. And going out on the production floor and having, let's say, a piece of equipment that created 100 units per hour. If I went out there and I spoke with the production staff and I said, okay, we need to improve by 2%. I'm sorry, that was abstract. Nobody could, it's like, what does that mean to us? To my financial people, they understood 2% because they had all the numbers and everything else. But my production people, So you had to make sure that you spoke in real terms that they could understand so that they could keep themselves accountable with the measurements. So if I said, okay, 100 and we need to go from 100% with the quality we currently have and go to 110 units per hour, just as an example. That was something that was measurable. That was something that they knew they were responsible for figuring out. I did not micromanage them as to how they were going to do it. I expected them to help me figure it out.
So that 10% in that case is something they could count on, 100 units to 110. So communication is one of the reasons performance measures, right? That's how you get to use it in the long run. And that's one of the rules. Got to be able to communicate it. All right, so let me go to the next rule, see if this makes any sense. All right, let's see, get our picture out of the way over here. Know the rules, principles, and objectives. A system of measures must be used to avoid sub-optimization of elements. So a system of measure. So when I think of sub-optimization, I think of a chain, like in a chain that you pull a ship with, or you hold a ship to the anchor. That's a chain, right? So if I went in and I looked at one of those links of that chain, then maybe, one of those links of that chain, and I make it the strongest titanium steel, alloy in the world. It came from space. It's something we don't even have. It's that strong. And it's only one link. Is that chain any stronger?
No.
No, it's no stronger because all the other links will break first, right? So when you sub-optimize, it's equivalent of going to that one link in the chain. So the opposite of that is think of it as a cable. You're making that whole system
Chain
stronger. And that's what your performance measure should do, because you can sub-optimize to the point where you can take away strength from those other piece of your organization, and you're spending time and money and focus on this, and it may not even be one of your key goals or your key strategic things you're looking into. So make sure that you don't sub-optimize your system by the way you measure. And you got anything you can relate to there, Ann? Or
Well, I like the way you use the chain and the cable as an example, because I think that's a great visual for people who are trying to understand this concept. And everybody understands, your chain is only as strong as the weakest link. So you have to make sure that you don't do that, space link and leave everything else to just fall apart. And using the cable where we all understand how it's all woven together, and the whole creates the strength of your company. I mean, absolutely love that. I never thought of it that way before. So I really, really like that.
there's a
Because your
concept.
processes have to be in alignment with the strategic operation of the vision of the organization. So if your processes aren't working, then it's one chain, one link in the chain is not working. If your people aren't on board, another link isn't working. So it's a great picture for us to see that it takes all of those pieces working together. Yes.
Yeah, leadership can't do it. The people can't, and it's like that 7 attributes of excellent management. All those parts have to be there.
Yes.
All right, let's go to another rule. Another rule: measures are useless if the results are not used as feedback to somebody. And so, we've probably been places where there's been reports that have been generated off of information that someone thought was important at one time or another, and then they just keep generating reports forever, and no one, and it gets to a point, well, that person used to be the CEO and he left 5 years ago, but we're still doing those reports. It's useless. It irritates people. It takes money to do this. It takes time away from other more important things. So if you're not going to look at it, don't measure it.
Absolutely. I think what we did, and we do a lot, is get in a habit of doing something, and we seldom question the process that we use. We seldom question the value that may add. So we have to go back and find out. Part of the measurement is to find out how that's helping someone. And if it isn't, that happens a lot in our organizations today. I find that a lot, that I'll ask, why do you do that? And they don't even understand. We did it, just like you said, we've done it for years.
Yep.
And I think we have to constantly be questioning the processes and the systems that we're using, and the way we're developing our resources to produce those values that we want. Yeah. So
right. And so the next step in that first step, we're still in first step, know the rules and principles. Simple, usable metrics must be developed and be able to be communicated. If you make it complicated, people stop using it. So the next one kind of goes along with that. If you can measure, you have to measure things that are basic. If it's not simple, not easy understood, nor easily tracked, then don't bother measuring, because no one will ever use it anyway. And so that goes.
And that was to your point, Ann. Yep. They'll understand the 10% or the 100 or 50 more. Yes.
Yep. Yep. That's exactly right. Here's a good one. And I have this guy putting his thumb on the head of the other guy. Should not be used as punishment. If used performance measures at punishment, people will lie, cheat, and steal the right measures in order to get not to be punished. So this isn't a punishment tool. This is a tool for improvement. And the best measures are connected for me measuring myself and not being beaten over the head or the thumb on my neck, to make this happen, or I get fired, for example. It's an improvement tool, not a punishment tool.
And I think another aspect of the tool is to motivate people. It can be a motivation tool. It can be a celebration tool. It can be, wow, we made what Ann came out and asked it for. It can be a learning tool. I mean, measurement is a learning tool. It's a benchmarking. Yes, we did it. We did it. So I think it serves a lot of purposes other than, yes, to punish someone. And I don't see it as that at all. I see it as a real motivator and excitement. I saw a joke on LinkedIn the other day, and this man was talking about, I can't get my employees, I'm a business owner, and I can't get my employees to act like this is their own business. And I wrote a note back and I said, well, empower them as if it is their own business, and it is. You are the leader. And he responded back. He said, boy, that is a great, because I think we are. You don't use it as punishment that they're not doing it. You use it as a way to empower them to feel like it is their own business. Yeah.
Right.
So
very good. All right. So now here's some just problems to avoid. It fits here. And let's see, we have, all right. So superficial data to continuously improve. Some people, this is one of the, I'm an industrial engineer by training. So I remember early on as a young industrial engineer that sooner or later you run out of low hanging fruit, right? And so you want to make yourself look good, or you might lose your job because you're no longer making improvements. You got the 110%, and it's almost impossible to get more than that, right? Because that 110 means there's certain laws of physics, and it won't go above 110 because the machine can only go so fast, that kind of thing. And no matter how good we get, and it takes 80%, the 80-20 rule, it takes 80% of your time getting that last 20% of productivity out of it. So the tendency is for people in those situations to come up with superficial data to make you think they're improving. And that's what you want to avoid. Parameters not selected, viewed at, well, that should be a comma here, not selected, comma, viewed as unimportant, right? So you want to avoid making people think that the rest of their work's not important because we're measuring strategic things. Misconception that everything must be measured. We already said that, right? If you measure everything, then pretty soon nothing's important, right? And you can't rank it that way if everything's equally ranked. Easily measurable, not what is important. I can go out and see how much time you're sitting in your butt in the chair. That's maybe easy for me to measure, but is that important? Maybe you're a salesperson. Maybe time in the office means that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Well, I'm going to add to that. My son-in-law is a chef, and he's really good with his crew. And he had a goal for them to reach. And they were in the kitchen at the end of this thing, and they were doing, the towel slapping thing.
Yeah.
Well, he walked in with their manager, and the manager got all bent out of shape. And he said, hey, that's not the behavior we want in the kitchen. What are they doing? They're kind of messing around and not paying attention to work. And Kyle looked at them and he said, no, you are taking this incorrectly. He said, they just hit a goal that I put in front of them that I wasn't even sure they could do it. And they did. They're celebrating. So you have to be very careful not to be, not to look at one circumstance and make a judgment about your staff. they may look like they're fooling around, but they probably just did the greatest thing in the world and they're celebrating for a minute, and you should be congratulating them rather than, giving them grief. You have to be very careful, and you have to really communicate with them and try to understand what's going on before you do that, because then it becomes very subjective
Yep.
instead of an objective
Yes.
way to do
And
that.
that example you gave, since I grew up in hotels and restaurants, there's a lot of towel slapping going around at different times. And I have stories, where I, about that, but it's all part of making it an enjoyable place to work. As long as you
Yes.
don't use it like a bully would, then you are doing something like two men getting together and having fun and slapping each other or pushing each other in poles. That's part of having fun,
Yeah.
for that group.
And
So-
celebrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And celebrating.
And you can make a mistake if you are too quick to jump to a conclusion.
Yep,
Right.
exactly. So easy, measurable, not what is important. Focus on measures and not the process. So the whole reason for the measure is not to measure. The whole reason for the measure is to improve something, right?
Mhm.
And so one of the examples I had with one of my clients was they wanted me to come in and help them get effective and efficiency measures. So effectiveness is doing the right thing. Efficiency is doing it the right way, right?
Mhm.
So we started talking about, well, how can we get these reports out quicker? How can we get these reports out quicker? How can we get these reports out quicker? I said, what's those reports on? Getting those reports out is one thing, but what's in those reports is what you're trying to improve. So don't measure on the report or don't master on the report. You might want to get them out quickly, but you want to make sure that what's in the report, the effectiveness of that report is
Right.
what you're
It has to
actually
add
measuring.
value,
Right.
value. Yeah.
Now,
Uh,
I want to, yeah, I'm going to jump in here again. I'm going to take it to a different place. High school. I was the type of student who could get an A with very little effort. And I had friends who would have to study for hours on end to even, sometimes not even come close to the grades I was making. The end result, if they did, the end result was the same, but I had it easier because of whatever, my ability to process material or to take tests better than they did or whatever it was. So the end result was the grade, whatever that was. My way of doing it took a lot less time than my friend's way of doing it, but we achieved the same goal. And that creates something weird. What about a soldier who holds a weapon incorrectly but still can hit a target? What's the goal? Is the goal to hit the target, or is the goal to hold the weapon properly? It's probably both of the same, but I don't know. If you're in a war, if as long as you can hit your target, I'm saying
Yeah.
maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
So,
it's the Army way. That's the answer, Army way.
okay.
Well,
I
I
don't
do
know
think-
that answer.
Yeah, and I think to Ann's point, there is a corporate way too. That's
Yeah.
exactly what they do, is sometimes they stifle creativity and greatness in individuals because of the measures that are measuring the wrong things. I mean, I think about individual performance goals in evaluating individuals on their performance. And I think many times it's that squash that you showed. They use those as the squash tool and it discourages versus
Mhm.
motivating and celebrating something that somebody's done. And I think that leadership should be looking back on themselves if your employees are not making it. I just,
Yep. So the other thing is, if it may be your measures may be discredited, if not sophisticated, that's kind of a sign of an immature person. If
Yeah.
you have to have it more complicated in order to hold your job security or whatever, then
Yes.
that's kind of a problem.
yes.
Redundant or elaborate systems can erode respect. That kind of goes together, right? So avoid that. and then not involving everyone can cause resistance. You want it to be, when I went into the situation where I was telling you about the reports, I said, okay, what would you want to, if you had a contractor doing this, how would you know if they're doing a good job? How would you grade them? Let's take it away from us personally. Let's say how you would grade them. So by having that brainstorming session, we came up with performance measures that were more effective and efficient. There's efficiency part of that. And then everybody had a part to play in it. We brainstormed, came up with something cool.
Well, I really like that because I think sometimes we bring in consultants into organizations and we let them tell us what they're going to do versus, I mean, we see that a lot. That's very true. And I think that you're absolutely right, Craig. Sit down and what is it we want from this person so we get it and we pay for what we get and value is added to our improvement. Yeah.
All right. That's exactly right. So we're running out of time for this segment. So let's go into the next segment. We can do that when we come back after this little break. All right. Thank you. All right.